Duncan, intuitive medium, and welcome to Behind the Scenes of the Rescue Mediums. Today we're going to hear some really fascinating stories and answer your viewer questions. We're lucky enough to have all the key people that were important and in front and behind the scenes to answer a really wide array of questions. Do you want me to start that again? That was not the way it was going to go.
That sounds terrific.
Okay, I'll just keep going. Thank you. For anyone unfamiliar, Rescue Mediums was filmed from 2006 to 2011 and can still be seen in many countries around the world on YouTube and on the newly slick, revamped veryparanormal.com. Check that out. You will love it. Mediums visited people around the country who were disturbed by spirits. They rescued those spirits into the light. It was fascinating, groundbreaking, and well ahead of its time. Today, please help me welcome Edna Dargie, Director of Research, Michael Lamport, Producer, Narrator, Writer, Jackie Dennison, Rescue Medium, International Medium and Psychic Artist, and Alison Wynne-Ryder, Rescue Medium, Quirky Medium, and author of the 2012 book, The Quirky Medium, The Extraordinary Life of an Unlikely Clairvoyant. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Thanks, Sandy.
Nice to see everyone.
Nice to see everyone too.
Even though we know we're miles apart and sometimes oceans apart and then more land, we're all sitting in the energy, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, of retrograde, of new moon, of solstice, every planet that's in retrograde, 4 or 5, whatever it is right now. And things are going a bit fluey. They're going a bit fluey here today, and I think they're probably hitting everybody, and maybe even the people watching. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it, yeah, I do. I agree with you, Sandy. I do think it's, I mean, we all know it's a weird time because of the terrible COVID situation, but it's just generally a weird time. And maybe that's what, I don't know, Jackie and Alison and Edna would know better, and you would know better than I, but a retrograde sounds really negative, but surely we can make something positive come out of a retrograde.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We've had problems today, haven't we? You know, getting everything up and running.
Yeah.
And my words, well, we've got gremlins in the works, but you know, as Edna reminded me before we started, well, you know, we have, you know, the new moon, and we have retrograde, which I know is something that you just mentioned, Sandy. So it definitely has an impact on people. It certainly had an impact on me today. I think it's having an impact on the weather. In England, we've never known it so hot. It's really, really hot here. It's like being in Spain with Alison.
It's mega hot here too. But we're more used to it, I suppose, aren't we?
You are now, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why people move to Spain from England, isn't it, Alison? In part, for better weather.
And they won't need to now, because you've had some really hot weather there.
Yeah.
You know, when we had all the storms, we had like really wet weather and all the storms at the beginning of our lockdown here. And you had glorious weather. You know, when I was talking to my mum on the phone and my daughter, and it was just, you know, I was like, oh, what's going on? But obviously somebody up there was making sure that we stayed in, and, you know, so it was weird. Yeah. And John always says, you know, we're talking about the moon, the full moon. John always says that affects me. He goes, oh, it's, you know, it's a full moon, is it? He says my energies change.
Well,
it's all about change. So.
Spain and England have always had a, let me say, contentious relationship. I mean, that's why we have Gibraltar, right? Because I want to let the Spaniards in. I'm kidding.
Oh dear.
Well, shall we jump right into these questions?
Yeah.
And thank you from everybody, from me to everybody that wrote in. It's amazing to me, and we're thrilled about it. So thank you in advance. And we're going to try and get to as many as we can, as everybody has agreed. So Edna, you reminded me last time that this should be the first question straight off the bat, so we're going to go with that. And I'm just going to read it to you. So it's from Ash. A lot of the background research, which is always spot on, goes back a long, long time. Is it easy to obtain these records?
Well, I get a lot of help. I start as early as I can to start working on it, because I do visit a lot of archives, museums, and I probably have more library memberships than the average person. Here's an example of my stack of cards from Nova Scotia and all over Ontario, all the different museums and archives that I've visited and got help with the research. And I'm always adamant that the research is spot on, that it is not third party, that it is actual documentation from the source wherever possible. And even when doing family trees on the show, I'm very careful when I go into the different genealogical sites that I'm going back to the original records, the birth records, the death records. I never count on other people's family trees as being necessarily accurate, because there's just a lot of copying, and there's so much opportunity for making mistakes and errors when you're doing it. So yeah, there's a lot of work there.
Well, Edna, you showed us an array of membership cards to different libraries and that. So I guess one of the viewers' questions might be, do you have any late fees?
No, I always follow the rules. I think there was one time, though, we were out for Ridgetown, and I had some books that I had kept because I still needed to go through them, and they were overdue. But fortunately, one of the crew members was able to run out and take them back, and I guess they paid a late fee. You're right.
So as the production, that was probably an additional $3 or $4 on our budget.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why we went over budget. That's crazy.
Edna, if I could still please stay with you for a moment. I have a sort of a second part of a similar sort of question from Izzy. And she says, Edna, were you ever a librarian or a researcher? You seem to have connections to get all that history and information in such a short amount of time. You said you run behind the mediums taking notes on names that come up, but wow, you are speedy in finding relevant information.
Okay, that again is trying to get as much information ahead of time as possible. Because as I run behind the mediums and I'm handwriting, scribing with my trusty pencil that I always use, I had to have a lot of information already there that I could go back and check out. So I could comb through it and say, yep, that was the name George. Okay, I know that in the history of the land, there's a George there. In the family, there's a George there. And I would gather all the little bits that had to relate to George. And then if there's another premonition, I don't know, I am thinking hanging noose. I don't remember a premonition like that, but I would look for any kind of reference to a hanging that might have been in the history of the land anywhere. So I'd try to gather as much ahead of time and make all the connections I could as soon as possible.
Can I just jump in with a funny story there of Edna? When we were doing our walkabout, this is how close she is to us whilst we are doing our walkabout, and Alison and I are talking to each other, or talking to spirit, or what our thoughts are. This is in Bath, Edna and Alison, and we walked around the corner because you know, just from one room to another, talking amongst ourselves. And we opened up, we like to see what's in closets, cupboards, and is that a door that leads you to another room, or is this just, because we have to explore everything. We opened this doorway and there is Edna sat inside this cupboard with her headset on, scribbling away. So we just had to shut the door. Do you remember that, Alison?
I do actually, sitting there.
It's so funny.
An exercise ball, I believe.
Right. Well, it was funny. It's a shame that they couldn't have left that into the episode, because it would have been
brilliant.
Yeah, but that's how close Edna is to us when we're working, because she has to listen to everything without getting in the way of the camera, obviously.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Incredible. Michael, if we may jump over to you. This is the second part from Izzy, but I have to read this to get it perfect. Michael, I love your humor and wit. You are obviously brilliant, and your creativity is expressed throughout the show. So hats off, Michael. I don't know who did the adorable introduction artwork and music, but it is brilliant.
Oh, but that's first of all, that's really nice for that person to say. I often don't think that my wit is as good as maybe other people think it is. But you know, the artwork was done by a company in Toronto, Canada, and we thought about doing that as an intro to the show, as opposed to like just a general intro. So it sort of became a theme of the show, that you would see animated pictures of Jackie and Alison. And anyway, I think it worked really well, because it was sort of humorous, and so it gave a lightness to the serious things that were about to happen. So it showed, I hope it showed the viewers that that when we do stuff, like, we're really serious about it, but we also find the humor in it, which I think we've done in every episode. That's what I think.
Yeah,
I think it was executed perfectly, and it's a nice balance for a cheers at the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in TV land, they or me or anybody, I think that's called like bookends. Like, you do something at the beginning and then do something at the end, and they're similar. And as viewers, we all go like, oh, no, I got it.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay, now swinging over to Jackie and Alison. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Edna. From Shannon, episode specific. Have you had any follow-up with the young girl featured in the show entitled Possession with the exclamation mark in Brampton? Season 7, episode 4. This episode took place in Brampton and featured a young girl who was believed to have been possessed.
Well, I can't speak for Alison, but I've had personally had quite a bit to do with her since that time. Through her, she's very, very mediumistic, this young lassie, and she has needed sort of guidance with her psychic ability, because she was sort of firing in all directions, so much so that it seemed to be affecting her everyday life. She's extremely spiritual, which is why this happened in the first place. So she's been on to some of my workshops in Canada. I've spoken to her on a number of occasions, the whole family. I'm sure you have as well, haven't you, Alison?
Yeah, I've helped her with not so much the psychic side,
Yeah.
but she loves angels as well, doesn't she?
She does.
So I was helping her with all of that, which archangels to call on, and she had a really strong affinity with Archangel Michael, particularly. And then when I was in Canada, she came on the angel workshop as well, and she loved it. So I think between us, and you know, she stayed friends with us both as well. I mean, it's as we have a lot of the homeowners, you know, they've become really good friends. You know, even though they're across the pond, so to speak. You know, we do still keep in contact with them on social media and so forth. So it's lovely. Yeah.
But she's doing very well. She's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
She's not been possessed again.
No.
Thank goodness.
That's wonderful. That's just probably one example of how your show changed the lives and continues to do so.
Yes.
That's beautiful. That's great. What a beautiful story. Thank you. Okay, Michael and Edna, we're ping-ponging a little bit. So this is from Tiana. Could you speak to the vetting process of how Michael found Jackie, Christine, and Alison? How did Michael ensure that these three women were the real deal and not sideshow opportunists? Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, I'll answer my part of it and then let Edna talk about it afterwards. When we first started the show, and I think I said this before, but maybe I didn't. When we first started the show, I, as a producer, was thinking about, you know, doing something about the paranormal because it was like in vogue and it's always interesting. And I was contacted. I believe I'm saying this right, Jackie. Correct me if I'm wrong. Somebody out on the west coast of Canada who was a cousin or related to Jackie, which I had no idea about. And this woman said, you should get in touch with Jackie Dennison because she's thinking too about doing a show. You know, she's not sure how to go about it. And so I did, and I phoned Jackie, and it was sort of spooky because Jackie said, oh yeah, I thought you'd call. And then what I found out is that the house that I live in Toronto was built by hand by her great uncle. And then she said to me, oh, and by the way, he's still there. And his name is Oliver. And I think he is still here somewhere. And but he's not a negative spirit at all. And so that caused our connection. And then myself and my business partner, Gregory Shepherd, we went over to England to shoot like a demo. And we did shoot that. And then we showed it to the broadcaster, and the broadcaster liked the concept, and then the show was picked up. But then after 3 seasons, Christine she left for personal reasons. And then we thought, well, who can we find to be with Jackie? And Jackie suggested Alison, and we talked about it. And anyway, it was like a match made in heaven, I guess. So that's how all of that evolved.
All to do with family history. I mean, how brilliant is that? So the spirits upstairs are obviously, and I'm seeing literally upstairs, up your stairs, Michael, my great uncle Oliver up your stairs, orchestrated, he's behind you, orchestrated the whole thing right from the start. Because no, you're absolutely right. I was doing my family history, and my second cousin once removed, or whatever the stages are, her name is Jean, and she lives in Canada, and she was researching the same family. So we were trying to find, she was trying to find a link in the family, I was trying to find my link in the family, and we connected, got talking, and she was going to research the family in Toronto, and I was researching here in England because they left England to come to Toronto. She moved there with her family in the 70s, I believe. But anyway, cut a long story short, yes, she called you and she said, do you know anything about the history of your house? And you were looking into maybe doing a show at the time. She said, I have a cousin in England. She's psychic. She's been on British TV. And so maybe you should contact her. And so that's how it all started. And and Uncle Oliver is still there. But you know, the weird thing is that I've just very, very recently found out is that my granddad's youngest brother, my great-grandma died in childbirth. So as a baby, this little baby was sent to live with a family in Manchester. I've never been able to find the family until very, very recently. And it turns out that he was brought up by Jean, who lives in Canada, by her great-grandfather.
Holy.
How bizarre is this? So I'm getting questions answered still through this connection. It's amazing. Do you remember those newspapers you found in your wall, Michael?
Yes, I do.
When you had the kitchen knocked out and you having the refurb, and you pulled some newspapers out of the wall and they were dated 1917. They can only have been put there by my great uncle Oliver.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because apparently people used to put, I know, this is what I was told. People used to put newspapers in the wall as some sort of additional insulation. Against the horrible cold. But it was interesting. And I still have those newspapers. They're in the basement. And, you know, and I don't want to, they're very, very delicate. And I don't want to really like open them because they'll fall apart. But it's very interesting that, isn't it? Because it's exactly the time that he would have been here.
He was at, when the house was built, and he would have been there. That's great research proof for you, Edna.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you've got actual newspaper copies there.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Alison.
Yes.
Here's a question for either you or Jackie. Who gets overtaken by spirit more? Who did get overtaken by spirit more? You or Jackie?
I think it's sort of a happy balance between the two of us, to be honest with you, Jackie.
I do,
I think initially, maybe me, because I was new to it and everything was just going, you know, I bet they thought, oh, you know, she's new at this and blah, 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 and it's easier for them to overshadow us all. But I don't know. What do you think? I think sort of, it was like, there's no rhyme or reason for it, really, you know, especially sort of like as we got further into the seasons. And it just depended. We just had to be literally there for each other. It's not something that you could do on your own. You know, it can be dangerous, obviously, you know, if you're being overshadowed. And I think somebody might have asked that question, when you're overshadowed, how do you come out of it? But if Jackie was overshadowed, obviously I'm there to help her out of it and obviously assist the spirit in going forward, and vice versa. If I'm overshadowed, Jackie's there, trusted her implicitly to help with that. If you're on your own with a strong spirit like that, I just dread to think, you know, what would happen. And it's something that you can't play at. Rescue medium work is, it's so important to get it right and that you're experienced, you know, in that. And, you know, it's teamwork, really, literally. But neither one or the others, I think, neither Jackie or me was overshadowed more than the other, I don't feel. It was a little bit of Jackie and a little bit of me.
Absolutely. A little bit of me, a little bit of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Equal opportunity spirits. That's what
There you go. Yeah.
Equal opportunity. Also, that's from a lady called Sandy. And the second part of her question is, why are the rescues done mostly in the evening instead of in the daytime? Or is that just a coincidence?
It's, well, you know, spirit don't just come out at night. They're there all the time. So it depends on what the haunting is, I suppose, really. You know, I think it's more, because we're working in TV land, it's more visual in this way. And we could start working about, say we started working about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then we might go through to about 11 o'clock at night. It could be the early hours of the morning, but it could equally be middle of the afternoon. There's no set time, for it at all. Yeah, I think your senses are heightened more, you know, later in the evening because the house is settled. You know, I think that's probably what it is more than anything else. What do you think, Alison?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, you know, here and in England, I've done spirit rescues throughout the day. We've done a few in the morning and an afternoon. But you're right that in the evening, and obviously the visual side of things for the show, it looks more spooky for the viewers, really, doesn't it? That it's at night. But also, yeah, the house does settle, and there's not as much. You're more inclined to hear a pin drop at night when the house is sort of settled than in the day. So obviously there's less chance of missing anything that might be salient to, you know, the clues that we're sort of gathering as we go along. But yeah, I think sort of for the show, it's more a visual thing for the viewers, because obviously it's all about the viewers enjoying, you know, obviously we're there to do our thing, but, you know, the show is for television for the viewers to watch and enjoy. I think if we were sort of doing it during the day with like bright sunshine coming in, I don't think you'd probably see us very well, and you probably wouldn't see what was going on and sort of feel us into it, you know. So, because I know a lot of people watch our show when we film it at night, hiding behind cushions, they're sitting on the set. And then they relax when we do the cheers, don't they, at the end? So yeah, that's a good question. Yeah,
Sandy, we've probably got time for maybe 2 questions at the outset.
Okay, from Karen, what is your first paranormal experience you had, and how old were you? Could be for anybody, really.
Well, I'll go and then we'll do around everybody. Yep. So I was probably about 8 when I saw spirit animals, didn't realise that other people couldn't see them. So I bent down to stroke a dog. And my friend who was with me at the time, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm stroking this dog." And she was horrified because she couldn't see it. She thought I was, you know, just having a laugh with her. You know, I could tell you lots of other things that happened as a child, but that's the one that sticks out for me when I realised I was weird.
Do you know what though, Jackie? You learn very quick, don't you, when you go to school, not to say too much about what you can see, what you can hear, what you can sense. You learn very, very quickly not to. Yeah. You know, and you know, you then think, right, I better be quiet about this because it's quite obvious from early on that not everybody can see and feel and sense what you do.
Yeah.
I was probably about the same age, but for me, it wasn't sort of seeing, it was more feeling and sensing. I could feel spirit around me, sense, and I could hear them. And I just remember, and I wrote this one in my book, I just remember hearing this really eerie sound in the bedroom, and it sounded like somebody was scraping nails down like a blackboard. It was a horrible, eerie sound. And I pelted down the stairs about 3 ago, and my mum was at the bottom, and I sort of threw myself on her, was petrified. And she just said to me, and this is what she always said, she said, "There's no such thing as ghosts." She said, the living will always hurt you far more than the dead ever will. And she marched me up the stairs and she said, "It's probably just the door, the bedroom door," but obviously it wasn't. And I just remember that one particularly. It really scared the living daylights out of me. Yeah, so.
Wow. Edna, Michael?
Well, when I was around 4 or 5 years old, in the bedroom at night, there was a small closet, and there would be, a parade of spirits that would come out, all dressed in it seemed to me very like long dresses and period pieces, and they would all stand around the bed. And this would happen quite regularly, and I wasn't afraid at all. It was, I felt that it was like family, like, oh, they're here again. They're here to watch me go to sleep. And that was my first experience.
That's lovely.
That's very strange, Edna, because I've never heard you say that before. But if I had a first experience when I was around 9 or 10, out of my closet in my bedroom came a bunch of people that were sort of covered in diamonds and really sparkly stuff. And they were in my dreams, and I was worried about it. And they actually haven't left since. I mean, mostly when I dream, that's the sort of stuff I see. I didn't know you had that experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't remember you saying that, Edna, either. I don't. Do you, Jackie? Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that, no.
No,
But
that is amazing.
we've never asked. We've never asked. So that's a great question to ask.
It is. I'm glad that's come out, because that's really interesting. Yeah. And nice that you felt comforted as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid.
Because you were so small, so young, so tiny. Yeah.
Deanna, working as mediums, have you had to deal with spirits invading your own homes?
No, I shut the door and say, I'm off duty, unless it's an emergency.
Yeah, you've got to be able to switch off. You know, you can't be sort of open and sort of inviting them in constantly. I mean, I've had spirits in the home, and I've had to deal with a spirit rescue at home. Not here in the house that we lived in Northwich, but not invading. You know, they don't invade your space. You just have to close down. And we have to have our party time as well, don't we, Jackie? You know, you can't be sort of...
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, so you can't be open constantly. So
no, that's extremely true. And also, when spirits keep coming in, you know, you got to prepare food. You got to like get some wine in and all that sort of stuff. It's sort of like, wait a minute.
Well, to end us today, do you have a pun about retrograde?
Well, that's a difficult thing to ask, but the only pun that I would have about retrograde is if you go back in time and be really retro, then maybe the grade on the slopes wouldn't be as high as they are. And that's terrible. And that's the worst I have. So I think, cheers.
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 Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks for writing in.
Bye.